Hello, my name is Jasmine Lee, and I am not your mama's astrologer. To those of you who listen every week, you might have noticed that there was not a podcast last week, and that was a really hard thing for me to let go of. But I think where I left off, we had been talking about relationships playing a really big part in the astrology. And that surely happened to me, just not in the way that I was expecting, as often astrology surprises me. My Aunt Joni, who I'm very close with, got ill and passed away. And my brother was in town staying with me. And that's not something we've done in over a decade. And there was a lot of relationships relating and a lot of learning about my own boundaries through pushing them in hard ways. And that's what it was. And then being at the hospital so much, I got really sick and still sound quite gross. But, you can't keep a good cat down, and a podcast got a podcast. So here I am, worse for wear a bit, but so thoughtful about how you can talk about the astrology of the weeks. You can formulate paradigms and structures and notions about the astrology of the week, but truly, when you feel the astrology of the week, it can take your breath away, which it surely did mine, quite literally. So as I am still healing, we go into this week. How are you? What are you healing from? What relationship dynamics over the last couple of weeks came up for you to sort through? I think that everybody is going through a little something right now, and in a place of grief where I am, sometimes I beat back the harder parts of it, knowing that we're all going through our own iterations right now of growth, of connecting, of disconnecting, of finding ourselves, of losing ourselves, that it's all just one big circle. And just like the astrological wheel, and it turns, and each turn is going to affect each person differently. And when it's my turn, when the wheel goes and it is my turn to take a hit, a growth edge, a moment, I try my very best to sit in it and know that bippity boppity boop, next it'll be this person's turn or that person's turn. And it is something so important to understand that it will always turn, for better or for worse. The wheels just turn, and what hurts now will become wisdom later. And I try to stay in that state when things feel hard, that things won't always feel hard. Because what happens when things get hard, especially the really hard stuff like grief and death and watching someone die, is that you get this powerful reminder of how potent and alive everything around you is, because you witness its opposite. And to me, not only is grief very hard, but it is also the only greatest teacher I know that can give me extreme and immense pain at the same time as extreme and immense beauty and connection to the other side. And so, my dear friends, as astrology astrologizes, as the astrological wheels turn and one becomes my turn, then your turn, from my heart to yours, no matter what, it will turn again. And maybe for the better next time, or even what seems really dark right now becomes clarity later, becomes what you grow into as a result of. And so I try to see these particularly hard, challenging times, even though sometimes I gotta say I cry uncle. I wave my white flag. No matter what, these are the moments that become the shaping of us, the molding of us, that when things hurt so very much, it is an opportunity to surrender. It is an opportunity to be vulnerable. It is an opportunity to allow other human beings to be there for you and to love you, that no matter what, the harder times are always also an opportunity. And I try. I try to stay in that place. It doesn't always work, and nor will it for anybody who is just human, who has attachments. And you know what I will say about death is what's interesting is the day before my Aunt Joni went to the hospital, I was holding a newborn baby. And I hadn't held a newborn baby in years, since probably my babies. And the trust and the love and the simplicity of it on a farm, just holding a baby in the sunshine with a duck quacking at me was so beautiful. And then to get to the other side of my aunt passing only a few days later, being in a hospital room in the middle of the night, singing her to sleep. It was the same thing, that birth and that death. The only thing that is different is our attachment, is years and years of history that I have had with this person who's leaving. And that's what this world is that as a children, we start fresh and new, and we become our attachments. We become these things, these rituals, these routines, these people, these things we accumulate. They become intertwined. And the work is releasing the entanglement so that they are just cords. They're cords of attachment, and we have the power to access each other, even from the other side, but we also have the power to release each other too, our cords of attachment. So that was my big lesson. I'm wondering what your guys' big lessons were. Mine was a doozy, and I'm sorry you have to listen to this sick podcast voice today, but the show must go on. And this week is a really interesting week because Mercury is a big player, and Mercury is our thoughts, and Mercury is our communications. And so when Mercury is taking a big role, especially the beginning of the week, it's a good role. So tomorrow, Tuesday, Mercury is sextiling Jupiter. And Jupiter is our planet of expansion, of good tidings, of opportunity, of good luck. And so I want you to think about expanding your thoughts so that if you have one thought, expand it into 4 thoughts. Expand whatever has been on your mind to its highest order, its highest level, to try to access what you're really trying to get at. We have extreme ability to use our words to impact others, to impact our reality as to our thoughts. So what do you want to think about this week that could really be a communicative game changer going forward? It's interesting, as I'm speaking, I'm feeling this sense of there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, and we have to be able to be turned on. Like, our body systems need to be awake and alert in order to understand fully, more completely, what it is we're supposed to be doing next. And this Mercury sextiling Jupiter is a wonderful opportunity to have access to more expansive thoughts, more expansive conversations. So my advice, your homework, especially at the beginning of this week, is have some conversations. Are there things that you've been meaning to talk about? Are there things that you've been meaning to say, meaning to think about, meaning to explore inside of yourself that you haven't quite because we've been busy, because we've been doing shit, because more shit has been happening on top of more shit? I hear that. I get that. But this week is an opportunity to really apply what our concept is of self and of other. And it could really play well this week to say the things. And when these things are expanded, we have the assist to say it better. So I love that for us. And then a couple days later, Mercury is going to be right in the sun with my favorite word, a Mercury cazimi. And when Mercury is cazimied like this, it is like our thoughts get clarity, which is why the homework being at the beginning of this week, start thinking the deeper stuff. Don't put it off. Don't just get busy. Don't just pile on work. Make sure that there is room for conversation. Make sure that there is room for your inner thinking. Because when Mercury has a cazimi, clarity is all of the sudden available where it wasn't before. So if we're already thinking the thoughts, if we're already starting the conversations, if we're already ahead of the game, then we can really use this Mercury cazimi to get clarity, to get clearer. And when I think about how that could mean personally, it's hard because it depends on what you're going through. It depends on what you're growing through, There are so many growth edges to be had right now in our world. There is so much opening and yet so much that feels closed. And that's the concept I really want to vibe and riff on, is that, in a political climate that is really intense, in a social media climate that is very mean, in a world right now that is very polarized, it is very important that we have sovereignty of our thoughts, that we have the ability to speak wisely, the capability to express in a way that makes sense. We all deserve to be understood, but we must take accountability for how we're saying it and what emphasis we're putting on what syllable. Because sometimes if we are saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, or we are not making the point that is the most important point, then we get lost in the minutia of the details, of the smaller things that really are the blinders to what the overarching picture is in your life. So, the beginning of this week, it is very important that you have time to think your thoughts. It is very important that you have time to have some conversations about some of these things you've been thinking about. What has been on your mind that if you shared it would hold you accountable to it? That's what it is. What is the thing that you are thinking about that if you shared it with someone, it would make you accountable to act on it? That's the juju this week. That's what I want you to think about, because then we have some pretty intense stuff coming up for the end of the week. Bitch is not stoked, not into it, because it's aggressive energy. And when you are in grief, I feel that soft is the play. But, we don't always get what we need. We have to be our own facilitators of our own justice system. So Saturday, after we've been doing all of this communication, we've been doing all of these bigger thoughts, and we have some clarity, obviously that can lead to tensions because, Marco Polo, whatever you're throwing out doesn't always get received the way we always want it to. Whatever goes out into the world sometimes can combust and become something completely different. So Saturday, Mars, our warrior planet, is in Aries right next to Chiron. And this is hard because Chiron is what hurts and Mars is our fighter. So our fighter and what hurts are right next to each other on the same day that we have a new moon. And now a new moon in Taurus is usually rad. It's usually like the best because it's so cozy. It's so nurturing. It's so foundational because Taurus is all of those things. However, my dear friends, it's not that simple because sitting next to the new moon this cycle is algal. And I don't mention algal very much because it is an intense energy. It is a blinking star. It comes in and out. And, it is the Voldemort, Darth Vader of energies. It's called algal, which is the demon star, ghoul or demon. It is represented by the decapitated snake head of Medusa. So in Hebrew tradition, it's also associated with Lilith. In Chinese traditions, stands for piled up corpses. So in ancient times, it used to be a representative of death, actual, literal death. But what it gets interpreted in modern day astrology is shadow work. Medusa was the only mortal one of her sisters. She got raped and violated by Neptune in Athena's temple. And yet Medusa is an evil, I put that in air quotes, an evil depiction that if you look at her, you turn to stone. And I find this to be a very interesting, it's feminine rage, really, because why's a bitch got to be the bad guy when she's the one that got taken advantage of? She is an incredibly intense representation of women's suffering and an incredibly intense representation of trauma. And so this algal Death Star being right next to this new moon, while also Mars and Chiron are right next to each other, buckle up, Buttercup, because we got some shadow work to do. Oh, yay. Just what you were asking for, right? I mean, listen, it's not the best. That's kind of crazy energy. And when I see something like that, I think of volatility. I think that anything can happen at the end of this week. And why the beginning of your week homework is so important is because if you are being expansive and reflective on your patterns, on your thought processes, on the conversations you need to be having, then there becomes this awareness and clarity around what I started this conversation with, that turning of the astrological wheel, that whether this one's going to hit you hard or not, who's to say? This might not be that big a deal for you. This might just be burnout. This might just be shadow work. Sometimes can be representative of needing to retreat, of needing to go to a deeper, darker place inside of yourself, of privacy. But with Mars around, Mars like pokes you. It's like that big brother that's like poke, poke, poke until you absolutely lose your shit. So both things can be true. You can be poked and still be okay, if not minorly annoyed, but also it could be a big deal. Something big could come up, something intense could come up, something hard could come up. And the reason why we listen to astrology, or you listen to me, hopefully, is not to, my cat just flew himself at the window. Okay. Is not to make mountains out of molehills necessarily. It's not to be afraid of the astrology. It's to be aware. It's to gather your awareness about you. I can't tell you how many times over the week as all of the intense things were happening to me and I remembered that this astrology was about relationship. And so of a couple weeks ago, so I was trying so hard to apply astrology to my situation, to say the astrology this week was asking me to relate. And so I am going to do that next to a hospital bed, out with family that I don't see very often, in situations that take me out of my comfort zones a little bit, that help me to be flexible while I'm also having to raise children and be at work. That the astrology kept reminding me, this is the work. This is the work that's being asked of me this week. And so I apply it to all of us this week, where there's a lot of thoughts and communications going around that could lead to some tensions and hurt feelings and pain and unexplored shadow work. Sometimes someone can say the simplest thing. Anyone, even some person you don't know that well, can say the simplest reflection, and it can hit in a good or bad way, and really send us on a tailspin one way or the other, can it? A line that we never saw coming, that makes us process ourselves in a different way, that helps us to understand ourselves in a different way. And we never know when those moments are going to happen. Isn't that the ugly, beautiful part of life, is that we never know when we're up for an upgrade. I'll tell you right now, we're all up for an upgrade right now. Every last one of us. And if you don't like systems updates, if you resist the iPhone update that will do it while you're sleeping and then you wake up and all your shit's different and you're like, I hate this. This is where we're at in life right now. It is a systems update that none of us asked for. And yet there is a community to it if you can release yourself into it, if you can surrender to what is and get curious around what is that shadow work that's going to come up this week, instead of getting fearful, instead of seeing it as a painful thing. If you can transmute it into a curiosity thing, that's when real work can get done. That's when moving that dial can really be up for grabs, because it is the willingness to be in this life fully that will grow you the quickest. It is the resistance that will also grow you, but it'll just take a little longer. So you get to be in a choose your own adventure vibe. You know, life is yours and mine is mine, and we all get to take from life what we are participating in. So, my question next is, what do you want to be a participant of in your own life? And where have you been dropping the ball in that participation category? I mean, didn't we all invent participation trophies for a reason? Half the battle is showing up. And yes, second is the first last place person. There can only be one first place. And I know a lot of people that are competitive think that. But the truth is, it's the participation, it's the process of life is why we're here. There is so much minutia and so much unhappiness due to unfulfilled attainment. But really what that is a smoke and mirror screen for the work you still need to do. If you are upset because there is a piece of your life that hasn't come through for you yet, be it relationship, work, money, family, if there is some place that you are struggling in the attainment of category, where's the love of my life? Where's the great big paycheck? Where's my success? If these are your questions, then I cycle back to the beginning of this podcast where I said we're putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. Wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. It's that if you are so busy trying to attain, what are you learning while you are trying to attain said thing? And you really need to get real with yourself this week around that question. It is very Karate Kid of me. I know, wax on, wax off, but it is in the doing of life. That is the point. And don't waste your time with attainment, because attainment is what you get after process. And if you are not in this life process with yourself, then you will not attain what you are aiming for, because the attainment itself is shallow. They say we produce the same, hits in our brain planning a trip as actually being on the trip. And that's where a lot of these manifestation masters talk about acting as if it's already happened, because our brains are funny things that way. If we are always in search of, but never attaining, then that's your shadow work. Because attainment is really just a smoke and mirror screen for the work you have to do. We all have to pass our own thresholds. We all have to be on our own hero's journey. And the truth is that the attainment of what you think you want right now isn't really what you want. It's not. I want you to think about the one thing that hasn't come to you yet, that is the thing you want the very most in the world. You close your eyes and you think so hard about the attainment of that thing. Do you have it in your mind? Because if you do, I also want you to think about, what if you just had it right now, but you didn't have to go through anything to get it? Would you really know how to appreciate it if you didn't go through the soul threshold change in order to be worthy of it? And listen, we're all worthy of everything all the time. It's self-actualization that is the true attainment. It is the perseverance of self to go on a new adventure that is the true victory. And so whatever it is you think you're wanting right now, I want you to get locked in to the process of it. Say you want to be an amazing yogi. You want to be able to do all of the yoga poses in all the land. You want to be impressive. You want to do those headstands in class where the other people are like, okay, speed racer, slow down. We haven't even started class yet. Don't be that guy. But also wanting to be capable of being that guy. Coo. So you want to be this amazing yogi. Well, listen, you can't just stroll into a yoga class and start, lifting your body into the air with no conditioning, with no training. Bitch is gonna get hurt. And then your yoga career is over. Bada bing, bada boom, all right? Because the process of attaining being a true yogi that way. First, we're all yogis, okay? You want to do yoga? You're a yogi. Amazing. Love that for you. Being amazing at it, you have to go through the soul threshold of pushing your body through something that it hasn't done before or doesn't know how to do yet. You have to try. You have to work. And most importantly, those kinds of things, especially when it comes to athleticism and athletic skill or writing or loving or working, it takes skill. And the problem with these new generations is that the patience level is so low that we just want what we want when we want it. We want what we want when we want it. And boy, can I relate. But if you walk into somewhere and you want to be a master of something, my friend, you have to work for it. You have to take steps. You can't just walk into that yoga studio and do handstands. You have to find your center first. You have to find your core and you have to work that bitch first. You have to want to work. You have to enjoy the work, not all the time, but there has to be an exchange of I'm giving this part of myself. I'm exploring this part of myself, this threshold, then this one, so that I can get to the attainment of that handstand, the attainment of being an advanced yogic practitioner. But you can't just walk into the studio like that. And that's where we're all missing the mark right now, is there is something about the process that leads to the attainment. So understand that if you have not attained something yet, it is because you are still in process. And that's perfectly okay. And then we end the week Sunday with Mercury moving into Gemini. And we know who's guarding the gates of Gemini. Why? It's Uranus, the planet of big change. So if you've done all of this work that I've asked you to do this week, about your thoughts, about your communications, seeing what's coming up, seeing what feelings get hurt, seeing what the thing is that ends up happening as a result of your expression, then things change. Because Mercury moves from the slow-paced thoughts of Taurus to the very speedy-minded Hermes, Mercury, Gemini. That's right. Mercury goes home. But it has to cross the threshold of Uranus, which is big changes, shocking changes, immediate change. So we enter that threshold and Uranus asks us, did you do the work? Did you make the changes? And all you need to ask yourself at the end of the week is, yes, did I? Yes? No? Did I make those changes? Did I grow through this instead of resisting it? Only you know. And the card I pulled is to be fair. To be fair, because what you give is what you get. What you put out is what gets reflected back to you. And this is a week for that, to pay attention to how your energy is reflected in the world around you, to how your trauma and your darker inner work, your shadow work, that algal star being next to the new moon, that's affecting stability, that's affecting how you feel safe, wants to grow with you and through you. And the release, the surrender, the yogic practice, I dare say, of stretching those emotional muscles, of breathing in and breathing out, of the non-expectation of being a master, but of the realization that we are all students all the time, always, forever. And to dig in and to continue to breathe and to continue to find the flexibility in the poses that your mind will present to you all week long. And you get to decide what you breathe through or step out of. Sometimes it's just a water break, and that's perfectly fine. Thank you so much for being here. My deepest ask always is that you share me with a friend, is that you send a text with a link to my podcast to your nearest and dearest. Because imagine if all of us and our nearest and dearests were listening to each other all at the same time, connecting on a wavelength. What powerful energy we can move and shift when we're all working together. Thank you again, and I will see you next week.